Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am your teacher Saima Zaidi. The poem that we are going to read today is A Poison Tree. This poem was written by William Blake. William Blake was born in 1757 and died in 1827. He was an artist in addition to being a poet. He was a poet and an artist. In fact, he became a book engraver and illustrated his poetry with original and exquisite etchings and drawings. Girls, he was a painter, and we can find his poems in the form of paintings too. His famous works include Songs of Innocence, published in 1789, and Songs of Experience, published in 1794. His notable engravings include illustrations of the Book of Job, Dante's Divine Comedy, and Gray's poems. Girls, Thomas Gray was a poet, and Dante too was a poet who wrote Divine Comedy. Girls, he was a great artist, and we can have all these poems by different poets in the form of paintings by William Blake. Girls, now let us read the poem. I was angry with my friend. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. Girls, wrath means anger, fury, that is gussa. Foe means enemy, dushman. Told, that is expressed, let out the feelings, meaning to say इजहार कर देना, कह दिया, इजहार कर दिया. In these lines, the poet tells us his story of trust and mistrust. Once he was angry with his friend. As he had confidence in him, he expressed his anger, and so it ended. But once he was angry with his enemy, he had no confidence and trust in him. He concealed his anger, and it kept increasing even more. Girls, in this poem, the poet tells us that the expression of anger ends it, but the concealment of anger turns into hatred. It keeps increasing till it kills the enemy. The poet believes that double facedness has far reaching, dangerous consequences. The results are disastrous. Next stanza. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles and with soft deceitful wiles. Watered it in fears, that is watered and sunned with smiles and deceitful wiles. Girls, a plant needs sunshine and water for its growth and nourishment. Here it is a poison tree, and this poison tree needs the water of deceitful and false untrue smiles, and the sunshine of deceit and anger. Watered and sunned means nourishment, nourished and strengthened. So we must be expressive to the people, whether they are friends or or they are not friends, or the people with whom we have simple and plain relations, but we must be expressive. We must clarify any misunderstanding if it arises. In these lines, the poet tells us how he caused his anger enhance. He says that he shed tears of fears in the morning, and at nights and watered it with those tears. He provided it sunlight and warmth with pleasant smiles and soft, deceptive cunningness. In this way, his anger kept increasing. Hypocrisy nourished the plant to become a tree of hatred. The concealment of feelings made him even more conscious of the enmity and the hatred from the foe, and he was shedding tears at night because he thought that the enemy too returns his feelings. The next stanza, and it grew both day and night till it bore an apple bright, and my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. Grow, that is, got bigger, nourished. Bore means it is a second form of bear, that is, it bore fruit, that is, it had fruit. Foe, that is enemy. Beheld, it is second form of see, means saw. Beheld means saw, that is dekha, right? And girls, in here in this stanza, the poet tells us how his anger kept increasing and grew into a beautiful apple, bright. It bore fruit. The fruit of this tree was a bright apple. That plant of hatred, nourished by hypocritic smiles, it bore a fruit, and the fruit was a bright apple. He says that the tree of his anger kept growing faster and faster till there appeared a beautiful apple on it. His enemy saw it shining and attractive. The apple was tempting, it was bright, shining, and attractive. He also knew that it was his. He knew that the apple belongs to his enemy, but it fascinated and charmed him. He was charmed and carried away by the beauty of the apple. Next stanza, and into my garden stole when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. Girls, into my garden stole, meaning to say entered my garden stealthily, यानी चुपके से रात के वक्त मेरे बाग में आ गया. Veiled, covered, यानी ढांप लिया, that it was darkness, it was a dark night. Pole, here it means tree. Glad means happy, that is khush. Outstretched, that is lying unconscious, in fact was dead. Beneath the tree, that is under the tree, below the tree, दरख्त के नीचे. In this stanza, the poet tells us how his enemy fell a victim to his anger. He says that the night fell. It was complete darkness. It was a dark night. The darkness of the night covered the apple tree. His enemy crept into his garden to steal that apple. In the morning, the poet was glad to see that his enemy lay dead under the tree. In this way, he victimized his enemy with his anger and contempt. Girls, the poem is built up on several contrasts: friend, foe, love, hate, trust, deceit. The poet talks of the nourishment of hatred. The process of nourishment is one that demands love and care. Here, this is used for a destructive purpose. Hatred is the outcome of the lack of trust. Friends can forget and forgive, but enemies nurse their grudges, taking perverse pleasure in destroying each other. The use of the word apple is reminiscent of the Garden of Eden and the idea of temptation. Eve succumbed to the fruit of the tree of life and the wiles of Satan. So, over here, the enemy is tempted by the apple bright. The act of stealth is committed at night. The time of darkness is associated with evil. A line from Shakespeare's Macbeth uh, that is reminiscent to this situation. It's now the witching time of night, that evil and darkness is and evil deeds are attached to night, the time of night. In the last line, there is a sense of relief, almost triumph. Hatred has won. And when negative feelings like hatred or anger wins, there is a tragedy. The language of the poem is simple, the meaning it conveys is profound. The implicit meaning, that is, the hidden meaning, is as important as the obvious one. The poet leaves the reader to make his own subtle conclusions. So, girls, it was our poem of today. And girls, here we feel that um, Shakespeare says that we are guided and directed by our feelings and emotions. This poem reminds us of the thoughts of Shakespeare. Shakespeare believes and illustrates in his plays that the strongest emotion of a person occupies and haunts his personality and life. His life is directed and swept away by that particular emotion. In Shakespeare's play Macbeth, it is the desire for throne that causes the murder of the king. In his another play, Hamlet, it is revenge that occupies Prince Hamlet, that works out a series of tragedies and his own disastrous end. In his another play, The Merchant of Venice, Shylock is driven by the evil force of greed and hatred, while Antonio and Bassanio are swept away by the gentle, kind, and benign feelings of friendship and loyalty. In this particular poem by William Blake, it is hatred that the enemy is lying dead under the tree, the poisonous tree nourished and grown by hate. So, girls, it was our poem of today, A Poison Tree. Girls, you must prepare critical appreciation of this poem. And girls, please go through all the questions, read carefully all the questions that are there in your book. And the students who are preparing from the other book, that is Easy Notes, uh, um, I feel they have one question, that is the critical appreciation. They must learn it by heart. And girls, all of you are requested to prepare the critical appreciation of the poem. Girls, the poem that we did previously, that was Departure and Arrival. You are going to prepare the critical appreciation of that poem too. We decided in the class that we will do all the critical appreciations of the poems, meaning to say, the girls, that you have not only to tell the summary, but also you have to uh, critically evaluate. You have to evaluate critically the poem. You have to tell the theme. You have to tell the hidden meanings. You have to discuss the stylistic beauty, the language of the poem, and girls, the stanzas, and the beauty of the poem, you can say. And so, girls, uh, if you quote some lines from the poem in your answer, it will be very good. It creates a very good impression on the examiner if you quote the verses from the original text, from the poem, from the original poem. तो यहाँ पे गर्ल्स, जहाँ पर भी आप कोट कर सकें, ये जो आप याद कर रहे होते हैं क्रिटिकल एप्रिसिएशन जो आपकी बुक्स में, हेल्पिंग बुक्स में दी गई है, तो आप यहाँ पर अपने तौर पे भी कुछ लाइंस ऐड कर सकते हैं। और पोइम्स में से आप जहाँ भी पोइम में से आपको रेलिवेंट लाइंस आपको मिलती हैं, वो आप पोइम्स में से ओरिजिनल वर्सेस जो हैं वो कोट करें, तो इसके मार्क्स बहुत अच्छे मिलते हैं आपको। गर्ल्स, मैंने आपको क्लास में क्वेश्चन आंसर्स भी डिस्कस किए थे, क्रिटिकल एप्रिसिएशंस को भी हमने निशान लगाया था हमेशा हर पोइम की क्रिटिकल एप्रिसिएशन को। और गर्ल्स, इसके अलावा आपने टेक्स्ट को भी अच्छी तरह से रीड करना है, क्योंकि रेफरेंस टू द कॉन्टेक्स्ट वाला जो क्वेश्चन है उसमें आपने इन लाइंस को, आपके पास एक्सट्रैक्ट्स आते हैं, उनको आपने एक्सप्लेन भी करना होता है। तो पोइम में आपके पास क्वेश्चन आंसर्स का भी एक पेयर आता है, और आपके पास रेफरेंस टू द कॉन्टेक्स्ट के लिए भी लाइंस आती हैं, एक्सप्लेनेशन के लिए लाइंस आती हैं। यू हैव टू एक्सप्लेन विद रेफरेंस टू द कॉन्टेक्स्ट। रेफरेंस मीन्स यू हैव टू टेल, you have to write the name of the poem and the name of the poet, the title of the poem and the name of the poet, or spellings must be correct, राइट, अदरवाइज नंबर जो हैं वो कट जाते हैं। बिल्कुल सही होना चाहिए। एंड गर्ल्स, कॉन्टेक्स्ट मीन्स you have to tell whatever the poet has described in the preceding lines. That is the lines that are given for explanation, not that, but the lines previously written by the poet. राइट, जो लाइंस एक्सप्लेनेशन के लिए दी गई हैं उनसे पिछली लाइंस में क्या बताया गया था वो आपने कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बताना है। वो आप करते हैं ना उर्दू में, हवाला, सियाक व सबाक, वो जो होता है, और फिर एक्सप्लेनेशन, दैट इज़ तशरीह जो आप करते हैं, ठीक है ना। तो आपने, मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया था गर्ल्स, आपको याद होगा कि ये हम क्लास में भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं कि 1 मार्क पोइम के नाम का, और 1 मार्क जो है वो पोइट के नेम का, और 1 मार्क पोइम के टाइटल का होता है, 1 मार्क कॉन्टेक्स्ट का होता है, 2 मार्क्स एक्सप्लेनेशन के होते हैं। एंड इफ द नेम ऑफ द पोइट and the title of the poem is incorrect, the marks of explanation are not awarded. राइट, तो आपका रेफरेंस जो है वो बिल्कुल सही होना चाहिए, पोइम का टाइटल और पोइट का नाम, तो फिर आपको एक्सप्लेनेशन के नंबर मिलते हैं। अगर आपकी एक्सप्लेनेशन सही भी है तो भी नंबर नहीं मिलते अगर रेफरेंस गलत हो। ये बात हम पहले भी कर चुके हैं। और गर्ल्स, आपने क्वेश्चन आंसर्स भी बहुत अच्छे तरीके से प्रिपेयर करने हैं, मीनिंग टू से क्रिटिकल एप्रिसिएशन, और जो क्वेश्चन आंसर्स हैं उनको आपने थॉरली रीड करना है, ठीक है ना, आपने गो थ्रू करना है अच्छे तरीके से। ओके गर्ल्स, अच्छी सी एग्ज़ाम की तैयारी कीजिए, मेहनत से पढ़िए। अल्लाह हाफिज़।